You didn't click on this video by mistake. Something in you is awakening and it brought you here. There's a frequency most people never tune into, not because they can't, but because they've been conditioned to ignore it. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, it's subtle, a whisper in the nervous system, a nudge in the dream, a moment of silence that somehow feels holy. That's how spiritual awakening begins, not with fireworks, but with unfamiliar quiet. If your life has started to feel like it no longer fits you, like your skin is too tight for the person you're becoming, you're not going crazy. You're outgrowing the illusion, and that discomfort, it's sacred. Spiritual awakening isn't always beautiful at first. It often shows up wearing the mask of confusion, loneliness, fatigue. It rewires the way you see people, the way you hear the world, the way you process emotion. It makes ordinary things feel overwhelming, and forgotten things feel urgent. Most people misread the signs. They think they're burning out, when they're actually lighting up from the inside. They call it anxiety, but it's frequency recognition. They call it isolation, but it's identity shedding. They call it insomnia, but it's quantum realignment. The truth is, they're waking up, just like you are now. Science calls this neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewrite its own story. Mystics call it the dark night of the soul. You might feel like you're falling apart, but you're actually falling through, collapsing into a version of yourself that already exists in a more expanded timeline. This is not a breakdown. It's a breakthrough that speaks a language only the soul understands. And here's what makes it even more powerful. The most overlooked signs are also the most important. They're the ones you've been brushing aside, explaining away, dismissing as coincidence, fatigue, or mood swings. But if you knew what they really meant, you'd stop running from them and start leaning in. In the next few minutes, you'll discover 10 subtle but undeniable signs that your spiritual awakening has already begun. Some will resonate like a memory you forgot you had. Others will challenge what you thought you knew about yourself. One in particular, number 7, is the emotional pivot that could change everything if you recognize it in time. This isn't just a list, it's a mirror. And by the end of this journey, you won't just understand what's happening to you. You'll feel why it's happening for you. Heightened sensitivity to senses or energy. The nervous system awakens. When awakening begins, the body becomes an antenna. Sounds that once faded into the background now feel amplified. Lights appear brighter, conversations heavier, emotions denser. It's as if reality turned up its volume without your permission. You might walk into a crowded room and feel drained within minutes, not because you're weak, but because your nervous system is decoding more information than before. The same brain that once filtered out subtle frequencies is now allowing them in. What once protected you from overwhelm is now being reprogrammed for awareness. Neuroscientists like Andrew Huberman describe this as heightened interoception, the brain's increased sensitivity to internal and external signals. Mystics have called it energy awakening for centuries. 2 languages, 1 truth. Your perception is expanding. Your amygdala, the region that registers emotion and intensity, begins to respond not only to visible stimuli, but to vibrational cues, the moods of others, the tension in the air, the hidden layers beneath words. You start to feel what people mean instead of what they say, and it can be both liberating and exhausting. Many mistake this stage for anxiety or hypersensitivity, but this isn't fragility, it's attunement. Like a musician tuning their instrument to a finer frequency, your body is aligning to subtler harmonics of existence. The price of greater clarity is temporary discomfort. You're feeling more because you are more. The edges of your awareness are stretching beyond your previous limits, and that expansion tingles through every cell. When you feel overwhelmed, step outside and let nature recalibrate you. The Earth's rhythm never rushes. It teaches your nervous system how to return to coherence. Place your hand on your chest, take a slow breath, and remind yourself that nothing is wrong. You're not overreacting. You're learning to perceive reality without filters. This sensitivity isn't a symptom to fix. It's proof that your consciousness is upgrading. Over time, what feels chaotic now will become intuitive wisdom. You'll learn to read energy as effortlessly as language, and you'll realize that the noise you once avoided was never noise at all. It was the universe trying to speak in frequencies your heart has just begun to understand. Vivid or lucid dreams, the subconscious classroom. At some point on the awakening path, your nights stop being restful. Sleep becomes a portal, and dreams, once abstract or forgotten, begin to speak with unsettling precision. You wake up remembering entire sequences, symbols that feel like messages, faces you've never seen but somehow recognize. What once felt like random fragments now echoes with meaning. You begin to ask questions you never asked before. Why did I feel so much in that dream? Why did that place feel more real than this one? Why did I cry in my sleep and wake up with a sense of loss I can't explain? This isn't coincidence, it's curriculum. And you're not dreaming, you're attending class. When the conscious mind finally releases its grip, your inner world becomes the blackboard where your soul writes in metaphors. Carl Jung described dreams as the theater of the unconscious, a stage where forgotten truths, repressed emotions, and divine guidance all come to life in symbolic form. But during a spiritual awakening, the stage lights get brighter, the characters become clearer, and what used to be dismissed as imagination becomes undeniable revelation. There's a reason this happens. As your consciousness begins to expand, the walls between dimensions thin. The same mechanism that allows you to sense energy while awake, heightened perception, emotional attunement, increased neuroplasticity, begins to operate during sleep. But without the ego as a gatekeeper, what flows through is unfiltered, raw, precise, true. In neuroscience, this corresponds to intensified REM cycles and increased theta brainwave activity, both associated with vivid dreaming and emotional processing. But from a spiritual perspective, your dreams aren't just personal reflections, they're transmissions. You may begin to dream of deceased loved ones giving you advice. You may dream of events that later unfold in waking life. You may relive past traumas, not to suffer them again, but to finally rewrite them. This is your subconscious reorganizing itself to accommodate the awakening of your expanded self. These are not hallucinations, they're instructions. And sometimes those instructions feel too big to hold. You wake up tired, emotionally raw, or shaken by what you saw. This is common. You're not weak for being affected. You're integrating a deeper level of you. That exhaustion you carry in the morning isn't just physical. It's the weight of having touched a layer of reality your waking mind can't yet explain. But your heart remembers. Some dreams may feel too surreal to analyze, others too intense to revisit. Don't rush to interpret them. This isn't about decoding, it's about listening. Keep a notebook by your bed, not to judge or dissect your dreams, but to honor them. The very act of writing builds a bridge between conscious and unconscious awareness. And over time, you'll notice patterns, not just in symbols, but in who you become within those dream spaces. The person you are when no one's watching, the version of you that flies, that forgives, that faces fears with open eyes. That person is you, stripped of conditioning, beyond the story, alive in truth. There will be nights that leave you shaken, mornings that leave you aching, and visions you can't explain to anyone. That's okay. You're not supposed to fit those dreams into your old life. They're revealing the shape of the life you're being called to remember. Spiritual awakening doesn't begin in the light. It begins in the dark, when your eyes are closed and your soul starts to speak in images instead of words. Trust the dreams that rattle you. Trust the symbols that keep returning. Trust the feeling that lingers even after you wake up. Your dreams are not an escape. They are an invitation. And the more you listen, the clearer the guidance becomes. Increased synchronicities and déjà vu. The universe speaks in patterns. There comes a point in your awakening when reality begins to feel choreographed. You think of someone you haven't spoken to in years, and they message you that same day. You look at the clock and see 11:11, then again at 2:22, then again at 3:33. You walk into a bookstore, and a book literally falls at your feet with the exact title you needed to see. You begin to notice phrases repeating, numbers repeating, encounters repeating. And at first, you question your own mind. Am I just noticing these things more? Is this just coincidence? But eventually the pattern gets too precise to ignore, too orchestrated to explain away, and something inside you whispers, "This is not randomness, this is language." Welcome to the frequency of synchronicity. In neuroscience, this could be explained by the reticular activating system, the brain's filter that decides what information you consciously notice based on what you emotionally value. If your subconscious begins to seek meaning, your attention will highlight patterns in your environment that match that need. That's the scientific lens, but something far deeper is happening beneath that layer. This isn't just your brain filtering the world, it's the world mirroring your inner frequency. Synchronicities are the universe's way of responding to your rising awareness, not as reward, not as magic tricks, but as markers, confirmations, echoes that show you're no longer asleep at the wheel of your life. You're becoming a conscious participant in your own unfolding. And déjà vu? That's not a glitch. That's memory catching up with alignment. It's your soul recognizing a moment your mind hasn't caught up to yet. It's a sign that time is no longer just linear for you. It's becoming layered, elastic. That sense of "I've been here before" isn't just about location, it's about presence. A moment so aligned with your higher path that your expanded self has already touched it. You'll begin to feel that certain situations are scripted, that people are showing up with the exact words you needed to hear, that your path is guided by something more intelligent than logic. You're not imagining it. You're perceiving the structure behind the structure, the field behind the form. Quantum theorists have explored ideas like entanglement and observer effect to suggest that consciousness influences outcomes. In spiritual awakening, you're not just reading about these theories, you're living them. But be cautious, the mind will try to dismiss it all. It's been trained to seek certainty, not patterns, to value the explainable, not the poetic. And so the first instinct is to minimize, to say, "I'm just making this up," but you're not. You're tuning into a new frequency, one where the universe doesn't speak in words but in patterns, timings, echoes. If you feel crazy for noticing signs, remember this. Awakening often begins with becoming fluent in a language no one around you is speaking yet. You're not decoding your reality, you're remembering that you helped write it. Every synchronicity is a breadcrumb. Every déjà vu is a thread connecting your past, your future, and the deeper intelligence orchestrating it all. So write them down. The numbers, the dreams, the repeating names, the unexplainable overlaps. Let them collect. Let them accumulate until the story they tell is too clear to deny. You're not waiting for signs. You are the sign. And the moment you truly believe that, the entire field begins to organize around your recognition of it. Buzzing or vibrating sensations in the body. The electric soul. There are moments in a spiritual awakening when your body becomes a conduit for something it can't yet define. You sit in stillness and suddenly feel a gentle hum at the base of your spine, a subtle pulsing in your hands, a soft current in your chest, or a flickering vibration across your scalp, like static electricity brushing your skin. It might start when you're meditating, or when you're lying in bed before sleep, sometimes even in the middle of a conversation, with no warning at all. And for many, the first instinct is fear. Is something wrong with me? Am I having a panic attack? Is my nervous system malfunctioning? But what if this isn't panic? It's power. What if what you're feeling isn't a threat, it's a transmission? These sensations are not imaginary. They are real, physiological, and measurable. But they don't come from illness. They come from energetic activation. From the perspective of neuroscience, you're experiencing increased activity in the vagus nerve, heightened parasympathetic arousal, and subtle shifts in bioelectric fields across the body. In simple terms, your nervous system is adjusting to new frequencies, spiritual, emotional, and vibrational. From a mystical perspective, this is known as Kundalini awakening, the release of dormant energy from the base of the spine, rising through the body's energy centers to bring greater consciousness online. And while the science and the mysticism use different words, they're describing the same thing. You're waking up not just intellectually or emotionally, but electrically. Your body is becoming more sensitive, more attuned, more aware of the frequencies that once passed through you unnoticed. Most people dismiss these signs as jitters, caffeine side effects, or stress. But this is not agitation, it's activation. The buzzing, the tingling, the pulsing, they are signals that energy is moving where it hasn't moved before. Your body, long ruled by unconscious patterning, is now recalibrating to hold a higher voltage of awareness. Sometimes it's subtle, like a whisper under your skin. Other times, it feels intense, like a surge that moves through your entire spine or chest. Either way, it's nothing to fear. It's energy moving, it's you returning to coherence. Take a deep breath and feel into it when it happens. Don't run from it. Let your awareness rest inside the vibration. Often, the fear we associate with these sensations is not the sensation itself. It's our resistance to it. The mind, used to linear thinking and tangible causes, doesn't know how to label what it can't control. But your soul does. And your body, when trusted, becomes the vessel for transformation. The more you allow these energies to move through you without panic, the more integrated they become. You'll begin to notice they come during moments of deep presence, during meditation, during grief, during surrender, during moments when something greater is trying to break through your old identity. And over time, those electric waves that once felt foreign will feel familiar, comforting, alive, like a signature of truth running through your nervous system, reminding you that your soul is speaking, not in words, but in currents. So the next time you feel the buzz, don't brace. Breathe. Let it flow through your spine like golden light. Let it remind you that something holy is unfolding inside your very cells. You're not just feeling energy, you are energy. And your awakening is no longer theoretical, it's physical, it's visceral, it's happening now, one vibration at a time. Irregular sleep patterns, the 3 a.m. calibration. Something strange begins to happen when your soul starts to awaken. Your nights no longer belong entirely to sleep. You find yourself waking up at the same time over and over again, often between 3 and 5 a.m., your body alert though the world is silent. You lie there, wide-eyed in the dark, unsure why. There's no noise, no emergency, no reason. Just this persistent sense that something is happening. Something inside you is being rearranged, and you can't explain it to anyone because it sounds too vague, too surreal. But if you're honest with yourself, you know it's real. You can feel it. This is not insomnia. This is reprogramming. Sleep is not just rest. It's when your brain consolidates memories, rewires neural networks, and filters emotional residue. But when your consciousness starts expanding, this process accelerates. The mind becomes a server under heavy load, processing, deleting, uploading new code. And just like any system upgrade, the machine sometimes needs to restart. That 3 a.m. wake-up isn't random. It's a checkpoint, a calibration moment, a sacred pause in the middle of the night where your soul and body sync. From a neurological perspective, studies show that during spiritual or emotional upheaval, the balance between melatonin and cortisol is disrupted. You may find yourself in a state of hyperarousal, not from fear, but from energetic sensitivity. Your pineal gland, long associated with both circadian rhythms and spiritual insight, becomes more active. Brain waves shift, and the veil between the conscious and unconscious thins. Mystics have always honored this hour, calling it the hour of the veil, the time of the whisper, when the divine speaks clearest because the world is quiet. You might wake up with a thought that feels like a message, a memory you haven't visited in years, a sensation that something is near, even if you can't see it. Don't dismiss it. Don't roll over and rush back to sleep. Lay still. Breathe. Ask your body what it's trying to reveal. Sometimes the night offers insights the day would never allow. And it's not just about waking early. Some nights you'll sleep deeply and wake up more tired than when you went to bed. Others, you'll toss and turn for hours, your thoughts cycling through memories, questions, ideas. This is the terrain of the awakened mind. Restless not because it's chaotic, but because it's expanding. You're dreaming in layers. You're traveling in frequencies. Your body is still, but your consciousness is moving. This doesn't mean you'll never rest again. It means your definition of rest is evolving. True rest is no longer just unconsciousness. It's alignment, coherence between your physical, mental, and energetic states. And that takes time to stabilize. So be gentle with yourself during this phase. Don't judge your fatigue. Don't panic about your restlessness. Some nights will feel heavy, others light. Some mornings will come too soon, others will come after what feels like lifetimes inside a single dream. That's not dysfunction. That's depth. You are no longer living a surface life, so your sleep will no longer be surface level either. If you find yourself awake at 3 a.m., don't reach for your phone. Reach inward. Sit in the quiet. Light a candle. Breathe slowly. Listen. These hours are sacred not because you're awake, but because you're available. Available to the download. Available to the guidance. Available to the parts of you that only emerge when the noise is gone. You're not losing sleep. You're gaining awareness. And soon your body will adjust. Your rhythms will find a new harmony. Until then, trust the process. The night is no longer a space of unconsciousness for you. It's become a classroom. And if you allow it, it will teach you everything you came here to remember. Re-evaluating core beliefs, the cognitive earthquake. One of the most disorienting and liberating signs of spiritual awakening is the quiet implosion of certainty. It doesn't happen in a single moment, but in a gradual unraveling that starts somewhere deep inside. One day, you catch yourself questioning something you've always believed, a value you inherited, a story you've repeated, a truth you never dared to examine. And for a moment, everything feels unstable. But this isn't confusion, it's initiation. This stage isn't loud, it doesn't announce itself with fireworks. It arrives in subtle friction, a growing discomfort with old ideas, inherited patterns and beliefs that once felt like pillars. You start to notice cracks. What once made perfect sense now feels hollow. What once gave you identity now feels like a costume. You look at the world around you, at politics, religion, relationships, career, and realize much of it was built on assumptions you never chose. You didn't ask for these truths. They were programmed into you. And now you're beginning to reprogram. From a psychological standpoint, this is called cognitive dissonance. It's the tension created when your inner reality no longer matches your outer narrative. But this isn't dysfunction, it's development. In neuroscience, it's linked to shifts in the prefrontal cortex and limbic system, as your brain reorganizes its understanding of meaning, identity, and coherence. You are literally reshaping your thought architecture. This is why it feels like everything you knew is collapsing, because it is. But what's falling apart is not truth, and it's borrowed truth. What's disintegrating is not you. It's the illusion of who you were trained to be. This can feel terrifying, because belief systems offer structure. They create a sense of safety, community, identity. To question them is to risk exile from others and from the version of yourself that lived under those rules. But this exile is holy. It's not rejection, it's rebirth. It's the crossing of a threshold into your own authority. You might begin to devour books on consciousness, quantum physics, mysticism, philosophy, not because you need new dogmas, but because you're craving context. You're not just seeking knowledge, you're seeking permission to think for yourself. And in that process, you begin to reconstruct something far more powerful than belief: direct experience. You no longer accept answers just because they're ancient or loud or popular. You want to feel them in your body. You want to test them in silence. You want to see if they resonate with the frequency you're now holding. And when they don't, you release them. Not in anger, but in clarity. This is the moment when true freedom begins. Not when you find new beliefs to cling to, but when you realize that the most awakened state is not certainty, but curiosity. Not knowing, but noticing. Not defending a position, but embodying presence. Some people will misunderstand this. They'll think you've lost your way, that you're rebelling, that you've abandoned the path. But what they don't see is that you're finally choosing the path, not the one handed to you, but the one revealed through you. So let yourself question, let yourself doubt, Let yourself tear down the mental structures that no longer house your truth. The rubble they leave behind is not destruction, it's raw material, and from it, you'll build something unshakable. Not a belief, but a knowing, deep sense of disconnection or loneliness, the sacred isolation. There comes a moment in awakening that feels like the universe has turned the volume down on everything. Friends seem distant, conversations feel shallow, crowded rooms make you ache for silence. You sit surrounded by people you once called home, and yet you feel completely alone. It's not depression, though it can mimic it. It's not rejection, though it can sting like it. What you're experiencing is ego dissolution, and it's one of the most misunderstood and most sacred phases of spiritual awakening. Your old identity, the self built from memories, opinions, and validation, begins to lose its grip. The personality that once defined you starts to dissolve. You no longer find satisfaction in the same ambitions or approval you once chased. You feel like a stranger in your own life, standing between two worlds, no longer belonging to the old, not yet anchored in the new. That in-between space is not punishment, it's preparation. You are being unmade so that something truer can emerge. In psychology, this is the stage of identity diffusion, when the structures that maintained your sense of me temporarily break down. Neuroscientists describe it as a quieting of the default mode network, the brain region responsible for self-referential thinking. Mystics have called it the dark night of the soul. All are describing the same event, the collapse of separation. When this happens, it's easy to panic. The mind screams for familiar anchors, people, roles, routines, but none of them fit anymore. That's because you're expanding beyond them. The loneliness isn't a void, it's an opening. You're being called back to the only companionship that truly endures. Your connection with the divine, with the field, with the unconditioned awareness beneath all names. This phase strips away illusions of belonging so you can rediscover true belonging, not to a tribe, but to existence itself. When everything external feels distant, it's because life is drawing you inward, toward the frequency of stillness where real connection lives. The cocoon feels like a tomb until you realize it's a womb. What's dying is the noise. What's being born is presence. Allow the silence. Don't rush to fill it. Don't force conversations that no longer resonate. Walk alone if you must, but walk consciously. In solitude, your nervous system recalibrates to coherence. Your energy field strengthens. You begin to hear whispers you couldn't hear before. The guidance of your higher self, the soft pulse of God beneath your heartbeat. Eventually, the loneliness softens. It transforms into solitude. Solitude becomes communion. And in that communion, you realize you were never truly alone. You were simply being tuned to the frequency where everything speaks the language of oneness. If you're in this phase now, hold steady. You haven't lost connection, you've lost distraction. You haven't been abandoned, you've been chosen for depth. This silence is not the absence of love. It's the space where love reveals its true form, still infinite and quietly absolute. Urge to declutter or purge habits, energetic minimalism. At a certain point in awakening, something primal begins to stir within you, an unexplainable urge to simplify, to clear your closet, end certain friendships, quit the job that drains you, or delete the digital noise you once scrolled through mindlessly. You wake up one day and realize that everything excessive feels heavy. The thought of keeping things just in case suddenly feels like an act of resistance. This impulse isn't random, it's energetic hygiene. When consciousness expands, it demands space, just like your lungs can't fill if you never exhale. Your energy field can't expand if it's cluttered with attachments, memories, and habits that no longer match your frequency. The need to declutter is your nervous system signaling that coherence requires clearing. You're not just tidying up your home, you're reorganizing your timeline. Every object, every commitment, every person you hold on to carries information, frequencies that anchor you to old versions of yourself. To awaken fully, those outdated frequencies must be released. Psychology calls this process environmental congruence. When our external world contradicts our internal growth, the mind experiences subtle dissonance, an unspoken discomfort that feels like chaos. The solution isn't control, it's alignment. Your soul begins to crave simplicity because simplicity mirrors truth. The less noise, the clearer the signal. In neuroscience, this mirrors what happens during synaptic pruning, when the brain eliminates neural connections that no longer serve its new patterns. In awakening, the same thing occurs energetically. You're pruning relationships, beliefs, and behaviors that block your next level of awareness. It's not rejection, it's optimization. As you release, guilt may surface. You may wonder if you're being cold or impulsive. But clarity is rarely comfortable at first. Think of it as your system rebooting, closing background programs that have been draining your energy for years. The relief comes afterward, when you can finally feel your own thoughts without interference. This phase can manifest physically, a sudden desire to fast, to change your diet, to move your body, to get rid of cluttered decor, old photos, even outdated clothes. These acts are symbolic expressions of one truth: I am not who I used to be. You're creating literal space for the new self to move in. Spiritually, minimalism isn't about owning less, it's about being more. When you remove what doesn't resonate, you amplify what does. You start to notice how peace hums louder than distraction, how silence nourishes more than stimulation. You discover that the universe never takes without replacing. Every time you let go, something finer enters: clarity, intuition, lightness. This is the paradox of spiritual physics. Subtraction becomes expansion. The more you release, the more room there is for grace. What you lose in quantity, you gain in quality. So if you find yourself cleaning at midnight or walking away from circles that no longer feel aligned, trust that impulse. You're not losing your mind, you're losing density. The universe can't deliver a new frequency to a crowded channel. Decluttering is not about emptiness, it's about readiness. You're preparing for the next download, the next version of yourself, the next chapter of consciousness that needs open space to unfold. And when that space is clear, you'll realize you were never letting go of things. You were making room for your own expansion to move in. Surge in empathy and compassion when the heart becomes your compass. One of the most unexpected and often overwhelming signs that your spiritual awakening is accelerating is a sudden, unstoppable surge of empathy. You find yourself tearing up at a stranger's story. Your body tenses when someone near you is in pain. You feel the emotional weight of people, places, even the planet. At first, it might feel like a curse, but this isn't weakness, it's initiation. Empathy is not simply an emotion, it's a spiritual technology. When the filters of ego start to dissolve, you no longer feel separate from others. You begin to sense what mystics have whispered for centuries: we are one nervous system, breathing through different bodies. This shift opens your heart in ways that the rational mind can't explain. You don't just understand someone's suffering, you feel it. And while that might sound noble, it can also be exhausting if you're not prepared. In neuroscience, this is explained through mirror neurons, cells that activate in your brain when you observe someone else's experience, as if it were your own. But in awakening, these neural responses are amplified. The sensitivity isn't just emotional, it's energetic. You're tapping into the morphic field, the invisible web that connects all life. And that means your system is receiving more data, feelings, signals, energies, than ever before. At times, it may feel like you're drowning in other people's emotions. You walk into a room and immediately feel heavy. You have conversations that linger in your chest long after they're over. You find yourself weeping at things you can't explain. This is your consciousness becoming porous, and while it's beautiful, it requires care. Most people dismiss this phase as being too sensitive, but you are not fragile, you are attuning. What's happening is that your heart is evolving from a passive organ of survival into an active instrument of awareness. You're no longer driven by logic alone, you're guided by resonance. Your compass has changed. Spiritually, this is the birth of compassionate embodiment. It's not about feeling bad for others, it's about feeling with them, without losing your center. And that balance, staying open without absorbing, is the spiritual muscle you're now being asked to develop. Many lightworkers, healers, and empaths are born in this stage. They feel called to help, to serve, to heal, not out of obligation, but because they can no longer ignore the suffering around them. But be mindful, the call to compassion does not mean sacrificing your own energy. Boundaries are not separation, they are sacred containers that protect your light so it can grow stronger. If you're crying more easily now, if you feel the pain of the world more vividly, if your heart aches for strangers, this is not a sign of breaking down. It's a sign that your soul is breaking open. With this heart expansion comes an inner paradox. You care more deeply than ever, yet you're also learning to surrender outcomes. You realize that helping doesn't always mean fixing. Sometimes it means witnessing. Sometimes the deepest healing is simply holding space for another without trying to rescue them. Eventually, you'll feel your empathy evolve. It will shift from emotional reaction to spiritual presence, from overwhelm to wisdom. And in that transformation, you'll find your truest strength, love without condition. You're not becoming more sensitive, you're becoming more whole. And in that wholeness, you become a mirror for others, not to see your pain, but to see their potential reflected back at them. That is the power of awakened empathy. Altered perception of time, the collapse of linear reality. Have you noticed time behaving strangely lately? Minutes stretch into hours during deep moments of presence, while entire weeks disappear in what feels like a blink. You forget what day it is, not out of distraction, but because your internal clock no longer syncs with the external one. This isn't aging. This isn't forgetfulness. This is a quantum shift in your relationship with time itself, and it's one of the most profound yet overlooked signs of spiritual awakening. Time, as we experience it in the modern world, is linear. Past, present, future. But your consciousness doesn't operate on that same line. And during awakening, the illusion of time as a fixed objective structure begins to dissolve. What you're sensing is real. Your perception is no longer bound by chronology, but instead begins to orient itself by vibration. Events feel closer or farther, not by date, but by emotional resonance. In neuroscience, this can be linked to the default mode network, the part of your brain responsible for tracking your sense of self across time. As your ego quiets, so does your internal clock. In deep meditation, flow states, or moments of spiritual clarity, this network goes offline, and suddenly the past and future collapse into now. This is why time feels strange. Your brain is reorganizing itself around presence, not productivity. The spiritual traditions have long described this shift. In the Tao, Lao Tzu speaks of timelessness as a state of alignment. In the mystic teachings of Christianity, eternity is not forever, but a depth of being that is fully here. Indigenous cultures speak of dream time, where all events exist simultaneously, and we simply move through them as consciousness. What you're experiencing is not confusion, it's initiation. This altered sense of time often begins subtly. You might feel like you're living in a dream, or that days blur together. You may struggle to plan ahead, not because you're lazy, but because the future no longer feels real in the same way. You feel pulled instead by intuition, synchronicity, and what resonates, not what fits the calendar. And yes, this can cause friction in a world that worships deadlines. You may find yourself resisting schedules, forgetting appointments, craving open space in your day. This is not dysfunction, it's detox. Your nervous system is recalibrating from urgency to eternity. You might even begin to notice time responding to you. When you're aligned, time expands. When you're resisting, it contracts. This is the birth of a deeper truth. You are not in time, time is in you. The observer effect applies not just to matter, but to moments. When you become more conscious, the universe becomes more fluid. You begin to live in Kairos, the timeless moment of divine alignment, instead of Chronos, the ticking clock of culture. And that's why you mustn't ignore this sign. It's not just about being late to meetings or losing track of days. It's about stepping out of the cage. It's about discovering that time was never your master. It was a mirror, and now that mirror is breaking. In this new awareness, you begin to move differently. You trust pauses. You honor slowness. You feel the difference between divine timing and man-made urgency. and you realize that your life is not a timeline to manage, but a frequency to embody. The world may still measure in hours, but your soul measures in alignment. That is the real awakening. Final chapter. You are not going crazy. You are waking up by now. You've seen how subtle and often misunderstood the signs of spiritual awakening can be. They're not always grand revelations or dramatic visions. Sometimes they're quiet shifts, a buzzing in your body you can't explain, an urge to quit your job without knowing what comes next, or a sudden wave of empathy that leaves you weeping in your car. But here's the truth that no one tells you early enough. Awakening often looks like unraveling. And that's exactly what it's supposed to feel like, because awakening isn't about becoming something new. It's about remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. It's about shedding layers, of conditioning, of roles, of borrowed dreams. It's about no longer being able to tolerate what was once acceptable, because your soul has tasted something more real. Yes, it's confusing. You'll doubt yourself, you'll feel alone, you'll wonder if you're broken. But you're not, you're just detoxing from a reality that was never aligned with your essence. And that's messy. It's not linear. There's no map. But there are signs, like the 10 we've explored, and each of them is a breadcrumb back to your truth. Let's recap what you've discovered. You're waking up when your senses become amplified and the world feels too much. That's not oversensitivity. It's calibration to a higher frequency. You're waking up when your dreams become vivid, symbolic, even prophetic, because your unconscious is now a portal, not a prison. You're waking up when you see repeated numbers, patterns, or coincidences that defy logic, because the universe is whispering to you in the only language it knows: energy. You're waking up when your body vibrates or buzzes without reason. That's not fatigue. That's frequency. You're waking up when you can't sleep at 3 a.m. because spirit doesn't follow a 9 to 5. You're waking up when your deepest beliefs crack, not because you're lost, but because you're finally free. You're waking up when you feel alone, not abandoned, but stripped of distractions, so you can finally meet yourself. You're waking up when you start throwing things out, not just objects, but people, habits, patterns, because space is sacred now. You're waking up when love starts to ache, when compassion becomes a calling, because your heart is no longer yours alone. And yes, you're waking up when time stops making sense, because you're not here to serve time. You're here to serve truth. This is what they don't teach in school. That awakening is quiet rebellion, that your tears are evidence, that your confusion is grace in disguise, that losing your mind is sometimes the first step toward finding your soul. So if this video resonated, if you found yourself nodding through every sign, if your body knew it before your mind could catch up, you're not alone. You're waking up. And now, the path before you is no longer about avoiding pain, chasing success, or fitting in. It's about aligning, trusting, releasing, becoming. Because once you see, you can't unsee, and once you feel the pull of your soul, there's no going back. Now it's your turn. If this awakened something in you, share in the comments. Which of the 10 signs have you been feeling most strongly? And don't forget, like the video, subscribe for more awakenings, and share this with someone who's secretly waking up too. You are not lost. You are being recalibrated. Your soul always knew the way home.